Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us for tonight's workshop. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Ailar, and I'm joined today by Dr. Nishi Bhopal. So today we'll be having our free monthly food and mood workshop. We'll go ahead and get started, and this meeting is being recorded just as a reminder.
All right, welcome everybody. And I see Kirtana is here. Kirtana, do you want to kick us off?
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm Kirtana. Nice to meet all of you. I'm the coordinator, or I'm one of the administrative team members for the practice, and I will also be navigating kind of the parts of the meeting today. So hope to see you in the future as well. Nishi, did you want me to take over the PowerPoint, or do you want to control it?
I think Ailar has the controls, so she can move the slides forward.
Yes.
Okay, great. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, great. So I just wanted to go over a little bit about our practice and how like a different sections that our practice offers. We have a psychiatry portion, which Dr. Bhopal is our psychiatrist, and we also offer psychiatry consults with the nurse practitioner that we have on board as well. His name is Josh. And apart from that, functional nutrition with our clinical nutritionist, Ailar, who's also on the call, and she'll be one of the hosts today. And apart from that, we also have coaching and mindset work that we offer as well as like an adjunct to treatment or therapy with either, if you're working with either of our clinical support staff. So that's also an option as well. And apart from that, does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, great. And if you can go to the next slide. So how our nutrition workshops work is we do once a month, we have nutrition workshops or workshops with that talk more about psychiatry and our practice and how functional psychiatry and nutrition kind of coincide and overlap. And we usually hold those meetings either the third or fourth Wednesdays at the same time as now, at 6 p.m. And if you're not able to make any of the seminars, we also offer recordings that you can access online as well. And we really love it when everyone participates. And if we have any questions, I'm usually the one who's going to be reading through the questions and trying to answer questions on the side. But if you have other questions, we'd be happy to have our host take over as well. So please ask any and every question that you have. And does anyone have any questions so far before we get started? Okay, great. So I wanted to introduce Ailar, who is going to be talking to us today through a nutrition plan, and also Dr. Bhopal, who owns the practice, who is our psychiatrist.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So my name is Ailar, and I'm the nutritionist at Pacific Integrative Psychiatry. So today's topic, we'll be talking about detoxification and specifically how you can detox from the holidays. But before we get to that, I just wanted to do a quick check-in from anyone who was here during last month's workshop. So last month, we talked about how nutrition can help us in the winter blues, and specifically feeling symptoms of depression, and how our diet can help improve our mood. So we talked about things like omega-3s, phytonutrients, and I want to hear from anyone that was here during last month's workshop. If you could type in the chat, or if you feel comfortable turning on your camera or your audio, what did you try last month and how did that go? I want to hear from you guys. You can type it in the chat. And while we're waiting, one thing I'll share briefly is we also shared a new recipe. So last month we talked about how to make blueberry chia jam. It was a really simple recipe, and Blueberries are high in antioxidants, which can also be really important for our mood, our mental health. And that recipe was shared to anyone that signed up. So similarly to today, for anyone that signed up, you probably received a worksheet, and you can use that today to take notes. You can write down ideas or questions that you have as we go along. So I'm going to give everyone just a couple minutes to type in the chat, or if you feel comfortable sharing, what did you try last month and how did it go? Okay, yes. I tried increasing omega-3s. It helped a lot with energy. Yeah, definitely. So omega-3s, for those of you that may not know, can come from healthy fats in our diet. So things like fish, nuts, seeds, avocados, olive oil, and omega-3s can really help a lot with our mood and our energy. Anyone else try something last month? Okay, so while we're waiting, we'll again try a monthly experiment this month. So anything you want to write down, something new that you can try, and then you can report back again the following month and let us know how it went. Okay, great. So here's a little bit of information about what you can expect for the rest of today's workshop. So we'll be talking about toxicity again, how to detox from the holidays, and how toxicity can really affect your body physically and mentally. We'll talk about nutrition, dietary tips that you can use for detoxing. We'll share a new recipe with you, specifically one that is going to be rich in antioxidants. And then again, we'll talk about a monthly experiment, something you can take away and try at home on your own. And then we'll end with a Q&A. So I'm going to pass it off to Nishi, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, great. Well, thanks, Ailar. Looks like I froze up there for a moment. Is everyone able to hear me? Just type a yes in the chat. Okay. So, so welcome. We're going to be talking today about toxicity. And so I think the first question that I have for Ailar, because I'm really excited to hear from you, Ailar, because this is an area that I want to learn more about as well. And, I think as physicians, we actually don't get a lot of exposure to this sort of concept and how to support our patients with this. So could you just share, first of all, what is toxicity? What are we even talking about when we use that term?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And as you mentioned, that term is used kind of vaguely, and we hear the term toxic or toxicity a lot. And in a traditional medical setting, or, in conventional medicine, we don't really hear doctors talking to their patients about their toxic exposure or their toxicity in the body and how that can affect them. So toxicity typically has to do with exposure to toxins, which we'll talk about shortly as well. And usually this happens over time. So often we'll see chronic toxic exposure. And this really affects the body in a way that's kind of different and puts us in an unhealthy state compared to what's considered healthy for that individual. So when we're experiencing toxicity, we might notice imbalances or changes in our body, and our body's trying to alert us and let us know that there is something toxic within us.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when it comes to toxicity, our bodies are detoxing all the time, right? Like we're excreting toxins through the liver, through the kidneys, in the urine, in our sweat. So why is it important that, we even talk about detoxing if our bodies are already doing that? And then what are some examples of toxicity, and how do you know if you have excess toxins?
Yeah. So, first of all, our bodies, as you mentioned, are detoxing in so many ways, even maybe when we're sleeping, right? So our body is just excreting things, eliminating things that aren't useful or might be harmful for us. But at times, if there's chronic amounts of toxicity, our body might need additional help. Right. And these are times where we really need to detox, where we need to provide our body with extra support to help eliminate these toxins before they become harmful for us. And toxins can come in so many different shapes and forms. So toxins can be found in natural or environmental factors, or they can be found in man-made components. So there's actually a different term for that. It's referred to as toxicants. So we have toxins and toxicants, but they get grouped together in the term toxins. Examples include things like pesticides or additives, preservatives that we see in a lot of packaged and processed foods. Toxins can also be found in things like heavy metals, arsenic, lead, mercury, things you might find in some canned fish at times, especially if you eat it a lot over time, your mercury exposure can go up. Another example is BPA. So BPA is really commonly found in plastic items, water bottles, containers that we might use. And this is something that we come in contact with so often as we're using these materials, as you're taking a sip of your water bottle, especially if you use it for a long time and it starts to deteriorate, it can even increase your exposure to the BPA. So we're constantly being exposed to these through the foods that we eat and the materials that we're using on a daily basis.
Great. That's really interesting. And again, so this session is meant to be interactive. So if people have questions as we go along, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll be happy to pass those on to Ailar and hear her thoughts. So, okay, so that's really helpful to know the different kinds of toxins. There's toxicants. So how do you know if you're dealing with toxicity? Like, what are some signs or symptoms we should be looking out for?
Yeah. So, our body's always trying to communicate with us and let us know something is off or there's an imbalance in the body. So this can depend on the individual, the level of toxic exposure, how long they've been exposed to this toxin. But the symptoms can show up in a variety of different ways. So, for example, your symptoms might show in imbalances in your digestive system. So you might notice changes in your digestion. You may have increased constipation, abdominal pain. Some people notice food sensitivities, and this is because the gut can become more permeable and not be able to digest our food in the same way. You might notice symptoms of your mood changes, right? And you can speak more about this, but oftentimes we'll hear things like headaches, fatigue, right? So these symptoms just start to come up, and sometimes they're more severe for some people versus others.
Okay, yeah, that's really good to know. And we talk a lot in an area of your, one of your specialties is gut health and mental health. Could you speak a little bit more about how those two things are connected and why, we emphasize gut health so much in order to optimize mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing a lot of people don't know is that our gut is such a big organ, or it's doing such a huge role in our body. So it's not just a digestive organ, but our gut consists of so many microbes, bacteria that are performing so many necessary functions to keep us going. So, for example, our gut is producing a lot of hormones and neurotransmitters that signal the brain, neurotransmitters like serotonin that affect our mood, our mental health, our happiness. Hormones like melatonin that affect our sleep. So a lot of these are actually being produced in the gut. And if you imagine, if the gut isn't in a healthy state, it's not going to be able to properly extract nutrients from our diet, create these hormones and neurotransmitters, a lot of which require these precursors or these vitamins, minerals, nutrients that come from our diet. So in that case, our gut can actually positively promote health physically or mentally for us. And that's one of the reasons why our gut health is just such a big component of our physical and mental health.
Great. And I'm seeing a question coming in from Dr. Marvin asking, would red dye and blue dye be in the classification of toxins because they too cause upset stomach, jitters, migraines, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. And, we see a lot of these dyes or additives in processed foods. Unfortunately, they're in a lot of foods that are sold for the younger population, children, things like cereals, foods that look attractive, but they've actually been contaminated with so many of these dyes. And over time, they really can negatively affect the gut and they can become more toxic for us. And I'm sure you can speak more to this about how it affects our mental health, especially from an early age, as you're exposed to more and more of these dyes and preservatives and chemicals, how it can really alter your mental state.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that processed foods, people who eat more processed foods have higher rates of anxiety, depression, ADHD, and mental health conditions. And so these things do have an impact on mental health. And I see another question from Dr. Marvin asking, what impact will this have on someone who is dual diagnosed?
Yeah. So, it's one of those things that comes down to the individual, right? So if if you are dealing with things like this, one of the most important things you can do is really get an overall assessment, like we would do in the case of a functional medicine setting. We get an overall analysis of all the symptoms the patient is presenting with, all their symptoms, signs, how long it's been going on for, any laboratory testing that can help us get more information. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about what steps to take as far as helping this individual detox.
Yeah, and I think it's such an interesting question too about the dyes, because that kind of leads into foods and the foods that we're choosing, and holiday foods too, because when you think about holiday foods, we think about like maybe cookies or pastries and cakes that have red dye or green dye, icing, all of these things. And I think it's important that we don't think of food as toxic, because that can start to impair our relationship with food. And celebratory foods like these things I just mentioned, cookies, pastries, cakes, and things are a normal part of celebration, right? So we don't want to be thinking about these as bad necessarily. It's healthy to kind of enjoy your food in these ways during times of celebration. However, they can certainly have an impact when consumed too frequently, or if they're just not right for your system. So let's talk about some strategies for detoxing after the holidays. So what are some dietary recommendations that you typically give to your patients?
Yeah. So, first, the most common question is, what should I be eating to detox? What do I need to add in? What do I need to do? But first, we have to figure out what to eliminate, right? Because as a functional medicine provider, we always think about root cause, right? So where is the root cause? Where is this coming from? So first, we want to eliminate what's triggering the toxicity or what's causing it. And in this case, when it comes down to the diet, we really have to look at those highly processed foods, preserved foods. So first, we want to limit or try to eliminate as much as possible any highly processed foods, even foods that might put your body in an acidic state, which doesn't really promote healing as much as an alkaline state. So foods that put you in an acidic state would be things like alcohol, caffeine, refined sugars, starches, flours, versus alkaline foods would be more whole foods. So fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy fats, nuts and seeds, things like that. Now, as far as incorporating foods that can help you detoxify, I usually focus a lot on antioxidant-rich foods. So these are foods that help reduce oxidative stress. They can help eliminate toxins more efficiently. They include things like berries, any type of berry, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries are going to be high in antioxidants. Other fruits like pineapples, vegetables like dark green leafy vegetables. You have, broccoli, spinach, kale. Nuts and seeds are also high in antioxidants, things like walnuts, almonds, pistachios, seeds like pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, and even herbs and spices like turmeric, ginger, saffron. So we have a lot of options and things we can work with, and it really comes down to the consistency, right? So not just having a bowl of blueberries once a week, but really trying to consistently getting these antioxidant-rich foods into your meals, snacks, and seeing how you can incorporate them. And when I talk to patients, it's really about creating something that works for them, right? A lifestyle change and what can allow them to efficiently and effectively incorporate these foods in their diet.
That's really helpful to get kind of that list of sort of anti-inflammatory foods. And I have a question, but I also see there's a question from Dr. Marvin asking, would a ketogenic diet be beneficial? For example, a blueberry mushroom smoothie?
Yeah. So, there is some recent research and studies showing that a ketogenic diet can be beneficial in so many ways, as far as putting our body in an alkaline state or reducing blood sugar levels and helping our bodies detoxify even. So, a ketogenic diet can be helpful. However, because we don't have enough research and studies showing how a ketogenic diet can help with long-term health, I would say that the ketogenic diet may not be appropriate for everyone. So we really have to assess the individual and make sure that this is something that can work for them. But I do recommend limiting a lot of highly refined starches, sugars, flours, which are a part of a non-ketogenic diet, but instead eating more high quality protein, healthy sources of fat. And these are often things that you find in the ketogenic diet.
And you had also mentioned cutting out alcohol and caffeine if you're detoxifying. So, those are staples for many people. And so if someone isn't wanting to give up those things altogether, if they wanted to do kind of maybe a period of time to detox, what sort of length of time would you recommend abstaining from alcohol and caffeine?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. So I always try to meet my patients and clients where they are, right? So someone who comes in and says, I'm having 5 cups of coffee a day, right? This may not be very realistic for this individual to completely cut out coffee altogether. So finding a healthy substitution either or ways to cut back, right? So having 1 cup of coffee a day doesn't expose you to the same acidity as 5 cups of coffee a day, or having caffeinated teas, herbal teas as a substitution. Or if you're someone who enjoys alcohol in a social setting, maybe finding an alternative like a kombucha, right? Something to help substitute for that. And then gradually, I would say, typically during the elimination phase, I would recommend 4 to 6 weeks for any type of elimination, at least before you see some noticeable changes. So in this case, I would say, going into an alkaline state over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, especially for eliminating things like alcohol and caffeine. And I do see here a question. What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting for detoxing? Yeah, and intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding is such an interesting topic, and it's such a growing field, and we're learning more and more about it and how it affects the body, how it affects women differently than men based on our hormonal differences. In the case of intermittent fasting, we do see positive changes on our mental health a lot of times, as we've talked about in previous workshops. We also notice changes in our blood sugar metabolism, and it can affect our digestion differently. So it does come down to the individual, but if you are intermittent fasting, again, we want to make sure that you are eating healthy, right? So you don't just want to be eating shorter periods, but an unhealthy diet. So if your goal is to detoxify, we want to make sure you're getting those antioxidant rich foods, focusing more on the alkaline rich foods, but you can still be eating within a shorter time period. Some people find that when they do intermittent fast, they cut back on a lot of those unhealthy foods, right? Which we might be going more towards later on at night, right before bedtime. We might be craving those. So automatically it can positively affect your goals of detoxification because you're eliminating some of those sugary foods, snacks, extra beverages, things that you might reach for either early on in the day or later on at night.
What do you recommend for people who are experiencing cravings? Because, I'll have patients who are doing an elimination diet or they're doing some sort of a cleanse or a detox, and they tell me like, I feel worse. I feel more irritable, foggy. I'm not sleeping as well. I'm fatigued. I have headaches. I'm craving sugar. I'm craving chocolate. I just want a cup of coffee. Like, how do you deal with those issues during a detox?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I hear that all the time, and depending on the individual and how their approach was to elimination, it's really important to assess that. So did they cut out things just cold turkey altogether, or did they do it gradually over time? And I really try to assess their day. So we do something called a 24-hour diet recall. So I look at their day and see, when did you wake up? How did you start your day? What did you eat? What was the gap or timing between your meals? Did you have snacks? Did your meals consist of protein, fiber, or were they mostly carbohydrates and sugars? So this gives me a lot of information about these cravings and where they're coming from. And I even ask, when do you typically experience these cravings? Is it right after lunch? Is it later on at night? And this gives me more information about if the cravings are coming from low blood sugars, if they're coming from skipping meals. If you eat a carbohydrate-rich diet, you're going to notice more fluctuations with your blood sugars, which drives a lot of these cravings. And sometimes we just have these cravings because we like these foods. So, even after a meal, you might notice you want to eat something sweet and you think, well, I had protein, I had fiber. Why do I still want to eat chocolate? And that's because it increases our serotonin. It makes us happier, right? We want to end on that happy note. So we just want to eat something sweet to finish off our meal. And in that case, it's okay, right? You might want to have a piece of dark chocolate instead of going and trying to eat, a bunch of fruit to get that same pleasure or that same satisfaction. I would say it's okay. Have that piece of dark chocolate. It's going to make you happier. And then you're done with it, right? So it's about finding where these cravings are coming from and really giving an individualized approach for meeting that.
Great. Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think the takeaway is that there are lots of foods you can incorporate to kind of support detoxification, but everyone's individual needs are so different. So if you want to go deeper into it, it would be helpful to talk to somebody like you who can provide some guidance on what the appropriate strategy is for each individual. So how do lifestyle modifications fit in with regard to maybe exercise, sleep hygiene, light exposure? How does all of this stuff fit into detoxification?
Yeah. So, we always talk about nutrition and diet playing such an important role, but it plays just as much of an important role, but I would say even a lesser role, as as our sleep quality, right? Our mental health. So if our body is getting the optimal diet, we're eating super healthy every single day, but we're not sleeping well, for example, our body is not getting rest, right? This puts us in a state of stress because we're not getting the rest that we need. We don't have that time to actually eliminate a lot of these toxins at night when we're resting and not doing all these different things with our day. And it even affects our cravings, right? So poor sleep quality can actually increase cravings for starchy, sugary, carbohydrate-rich foods. So it can actually have the opposite effect of detoxification because now we're wanting to eat more of those highly preserved or additive foods that have more of those pesticides. Also, other lifestyle factors like exercise. So when we exercise, as we talked about earlier, you're excreting a lot of toxins. You're sweating, you're getting them out. You're even going to be drinking more water likely, which is also going to help your body flush out a lot of toxins. It's going to keep you hydrated. And then lastly, our mental health, as you know, when we're in a state of stress, or if we're feeling more anxious, it can put our body into more of a state of oxidative stress, versus allowing us to be more in a state of relaxation and allowing our body to properly absorb these nutrients so we can extract them and eliminate those toxins more efficiently.
That's a great point about the lifestyle and stress. And Kirtana is just saying important takeaway is when utilizing an elimination diet, it's important to plan for and incorporate foods that we crave in order to maintain and sustain the diet. So you can have that chocolate guilt-free at the end of the day. So I'll take that as a pass. And I love my dark chocolate. But, one of the things I'll just add to detoxification is that what we consume is not just food. We also consume social media, we consume the news, we consume so much information every day. And so if you're doing a detox or a cleanse or an elimination diet, also being mindful about what else are you consuming? Like, are you cutting out sugar but scrolling Instagram all day? Like, that's not going to be good for your stress levels and your mental health either. So just being mindful of what we're consuming physically, food-wise, but also mentally and emotionally. So then that leads into the question of like, how do we limit our exposure to toxins in the first place?
Yeah. And, you mentioned such a great point. And I'll just add on to that a little bit. As you mentioned, with social media, a lot of the tips and advice we get about what to eat or what to look like or how to exercise comes from social media, right? We're just scrolling and looking at other people and what they're doing and thinking that what they do will work for us. And oftentimes that's not the case because we live different lives. We have different schedules. Our bodies have different needs. So that can be toxic in a way as we're trying to put all those, expectations on our own lives, but then they can't be met. And that can be very stressful. But to answer your question, as far as detoxification and things that we can do, I'm sorry, your question was about detoxing.
Yeah. How do we limit our exposure to toxins?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, the toxins are in so many places in our environment, even in our cell phones, our computers, surfaces that we come into contact with, right? We talked about the water bottles, containers that we use. So one thing you can do is actually try and look in your surroundings for places of possible exposure. Now, not all of us are being exposed to the same extent, but if you are someone that is being exposed to high amounts of toxins, especially if you've had certain testing that indicate this, I always say, finding the root cause of where this is coming from. So we have to look in our environment. Finding the primary cause is most important, but then also there can be multiple areas where we're being exposed. If you have household items that you use very frequently, so things like, laundry detergent, dish soap, shampoo, conditioner, lotions, right? These are all places where we're being exposed to chemicals, not necessarily bad chemicals, but we could find specific ingredients in there that are toxic. And if we're using it on a daily basis, over time, it can increase our toxic exposure. I was just talking to a patient the other day, and they said, well, how do I know? How do I know if this product is toxic for me? So the internet can be an okay place to look, but there are even certain apps that you can download. There's one app called, I think it's called like Think Dirty. You can even scan labels and it'll tell you immediately, this ingredient is toxic for these reasons, and this is the toxicity level and why you should avoid it, right? So we can be really informed based on our environment, products that we're coming into contact with, and by using these resources. I'm just looking in the chat box here. Dr. Marvin, sleep deprivation will zap our dopamine and increase our serotonin 2A receptors, which causes cognitive impairment. Yes, that is so true. Will toxins from chemicals over time cause Parkinson's disease? That's a really great question, Nishi. I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just tag on to the sleep deprivation comment as well. And absolutely, sleep deprivation is going to, affect our neurotransmitters. And another really important function that happens during sleep is detoxification of the brain through the lymphatic system. And this happens primarily during stage 3 deep sleep, where we get these kind of synchronized brain waves that go from the front to the back and actually like push out toxins that build up during the day. And then some of these toxins are amyloid beta and tau protein, which are implicated in the development of dementia later in life. And so there potentially could, increase risk of Alzheimer's. As far as Parkinson's disease, I don't know offhand what the research is specifically on specific toxic chemicals, but I would imagine there would be a link there with toxic exposure and Parkinson's disease, as there certainly is with Alzheimer's and sleep, as I just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. And, going back to the toxic exposure, a lot of the foods that we eat can also contain a lot of toxins. So looking at preservatives, additives, ingredients, right? So I always say minimal ingredients are best, and ingredients that you can understand. And then trying to eat more of a whole foods diet. That way you're automatically limiting and eliminating a lot of those highly processed foods, which are going to contain a lot of those pesticides and additives that can be more toxic for us.
Right. And I just did a quick search here, cursory search just for Dr. Marvin's question. And so there is new evidence showing that there is a link between exposure to toxic environmental factors like pesticides, air pollutants, man-made materials, and an increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's. So yes, so there's a very strong link here with brain health, mental health, gut health, physical health. So limiting our exposure to toxins is really important. And Ailar, what was the app again that you had mentioned? Was it Dirty?
It's called Think Dirty.
Think Dirty.
Yeah.
Yes, and Dr. Marvin is asking for the link, so I'll drop that in the chat in a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting, how toxins, especially exposure over time, can really affect our physical and mental health. And a lot of times we don't realize it until we get these tests, right? And we find out. And if you go to your primary care doctor, they're not really going to be looking at your toxic exposure, your oxidative stress levels. So it's not until you present with so many severe symptoms that you really find out that you are experiencing the toxicity.
So how, we've been talking about how do we know if we have toxic exposure? How does testing fit into all of this? What type of testing is available and when should you consider doing tests for toxicity?
Yeah, so, at Pacific Integrative Psychiatry, we do a really holistic overall assessment of the individual and the symptoms that they present with. So even someone that comes in with the complaint of constipation, I'm still going to do an overall analysis and see what other symptoms are they presenting with. Are they trying to lose weight? They're having a really hard time. Are they experiencing moodiness, or are they experiencing high levels of anxiety throughout the day? Is there indication that their blood sugars may not be in balance? So these symptoms tell us a little bit more about if we should be looking at vitamin and mineral deficiencies and insufficiencies. And there is a really good test that we offer. So we have a variety of precision laboratory testing that we offer that's very unique to our practice, that allows us to kind of have a comprehensive look and get more information about some of these key nutrients and vitamin mineral deficiencies that are involved in our metabolic pathway. So one of the tests that we offer shows the metabolic pathway and how we extract nutrients from our diet, but it also shows that in this pathway, are we experiencing high levels of oxidative stress, and are we being exposed to toxins in our environment that are actually taking away certain nutrients from our diet and within our bodies that aren't allowing us to properly break down our food and get energy from our food? So you can really see how it connects our gut, where the nutrients are break down, to our brain, where the energy comes from the food. And I really like this test because it tells us the level of toxin exposure, and it tells us how we can address it by adding in more nutrients that are missing in our diet that can help supplement for our metabolic pathways. We also offer urine analysis, stool analysis, even specific testing that tell us the toxins that you are exposed to and at what levels. So if we need to look a little bit deeper, if you are experiencing really high levels of toxicity. But typically, I would say it's better to take a preventative approach and try to look at some of these tests and lab results before the symptoms become more severe.
And where do supplements fit in? Do you use supplements for detoxification? What kind? How do you know if you should take them? Do you need testing to figure out the supplements? How does that work?
Yeah, and that's a really great question, and a question that I get from most people. So I think, the reason for that is because supplements are the easy way to just say, I take this pill, then it'll just make my problems go away. But until we optimize our diet and our gut health, the supplements aren't really going to be helpful. So the first step is to optimize your diet, making sure you're eating healthy, you're limiting a lot of these toxic foods and preservatives, chemicals that you could be exposed to. Now, in the case of supplements, these tests actually tell us more if you have certain vitamin and mineral deficiencies and how much. So if you are really, let's say, deficient in magnesium, which is such an important, part of our diet, our mental health. So I would recommend supplementing with things like magnesium, the B vitamins as well, which play a big role in our digestion, our immune system, our energy levels. We also look at your gut health. So if your gut needs extra support through the use of prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes, I would recommend utilizing these supplements during the detoxification phase. But ideally, our goal isn't to become dependent on them. We're just using them as extra support while we're optimizing our health, and then ideally transitioning off of them.
Okay, great. And then, I see another question from Dr. Marvin here. So he's saying the gut is the second brain. So could it be possible that high levels of toxins could create DDIs with medication, or it could alter the outcome? Is the testing ruling out certain medication to get the imbalance in deficiency?
Is the testing ruling out certain medication to get the imbalance? I'm not exactly sure what he means by that.
Dr. Marvin, do you mean, are we seeing if certain medications should be stopped because of their potential toxic effects? Am I understanding that correctly?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, in my field, I don't use a lot of medications. I don't use prescriptions, mostly diet and supplements approach. However, it is really important to take into consideration what medications the patient or the client is taking, just to make sure that there is no interactions, and making sure that they are being followed by their primary care provider, their mental health provider. And Nishi, I'm sure that you can speak more to that as well.
Yeah, and the other aspect of it is figuring out what are the root causes of a person's symptoms and why are they on the medication in the first place. Mm-hmm. And if there are underlying imbalances, whether it's from toxicity or micronutrient deficiencies or hormonal imbalances, correcting those can help us potentially taper off the medication that may actually be causing more side effects downstream. So testing isn't always necessary for that process. A lot of the work that we do can be done without having to do any fancy tests, but the tests can certainly help us figure out what the diagnosis is in a more precise way. So being mindful of time here, this was so much great information. Thank you, Ailar. And so if people want to take a deeper dive, if they're interested in working with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I would highly recommend visiting our website just to become more familiar with our practice and what makes us so unique and the services that we offer. So you can go to pacificintegrativepsych.com. It was in the first couple of slides of this PowerPoint. We can also put it in the chat for you guys. And I would recommend following us on social media. So we have Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and that's a really great place to stay up to date with any events or future workshops that we're having. And you can sign up. Even if you're not able to attend live, I would highly recommend signing up because we do send the full recording to you afterwards. So you can watch it on your own, on your free time. And then if you are interested in working with me, you can contact us through our website at contact@pacificintegrativepsych.com. You can learn more about whether or not we're a good fit for you and what kind of services we offer. And that way we can work together one-on-one to talk about any of your gut health or dietary needs.
Great. And I know you have a recipe to share with us today about, I guess it's a detox supporting recipe. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think smoothies are just such a great way to add in extra nutrients. So I'm just going to share my screen here with you guys. There we go. Okay, so, smoothies are such an easy, convenient way to add extra nutrients into our diet. You can pack so many delicious and healthy ingredients. So we have a detox smoothie here, and the recipe should be on the worksheet that you received, but we include things like spinach, pineapples, chia seeds, which are really rich in antioxidants and nutrients to help your body detox from the holidays. You can even add extra ingredients into your smoothie to get a little bit more protein. Let's say you want this to be the start of your day, right? Maybe you want to add a scoop of nut butter, like peanut butter, almond butter, if you have a healthy protein powder that you like to use. So I would recommend trying this smoothie. You can even substitute other ingredients. Let's say you don't like blueberries, you want to try a different fruit like raspberries, which is also high in antioxidants. You can do that substitution. So it's really easy and simple to make. And I recommend having it for breakfast, having it as a snack if you're craving it in between your meals. Make sure to share it with your friends and family and tell them why it's good for them. I think it's always really important to share your knowledge about nutrition, eating healthy with the people around you. And I want to hear from everyone. If you like making smoothies, if you like this recipe, when do you plan on trying it, or how do you plan on incorporating it into your diet? Yeah, Kirtana said, love making smoothies post-workout. Yeah, it's such a great way to cool down, especially after a workout. If you're not feeling really hungry to eat a big meal, it's a great way to get some extra nutrients. One important thing I mention to my patients all the time is that if you are using a smoothie as a meal replacement, make sure to add something crunchy either on top or inside of the smoothie, because what happens is when you drink the smoothie, your brain doesn't associate this as a complete meal because you're not releasing the same enzymes, you're not chewing, your digestive system isn't breaking it down in the same way. But let's say you have, a handful of nuts or you have some crunchy granola on top. That way your digestive system is working and the brain knows that this is a complete meal. Yeah, Sandeep loves smoothies, packs a bunch of good fruits and veggies. Yeah, such a good way to get extra fruits and veggies, especially, the amount of fruits and veggies we have to eat on a daily basis can sometimes be hard to do. But if you pack them into a smoothie, it's a really great way to incorporate them. Dr. Marvin, post workout 3 times a week. Blueberry mushroom is my newest. Yeah, I'll have to check out that blueberry mushroom smoothie. It sounds really interesting.
Dr. Marvin, what kind of mushroom do you use in the smoothie? So I know so many people are into the mushroom drinks these days, like the reishi, or like some of them have adaptogenic properties, chaga, and all of those. So where else? Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. You can even find the mushrooms in the protein powders, as Kirtana said. You can find all these extra nutrients, so you can find ways to get extra energy. The adaptogens, can help you be calm and more alert and focused. So that's one of the reasons I love smoothies. Protein is the purpose. Okay. Yeah. Good. All right. Anyone else plan on trying the smoothie? If so, please let us know in the chat. I'm just going to move on to the next slide here. All right. So if you have your worksheet, I recommend writing down your monthly experiment on there. It's a really great way to keep track and remind yourself of what you plan on focusing on for this next month. So again, we talked about detoxification, ways to help your body eliminate toxins, especially if they were accumulated from over the holidays. So what do you plan on trying this month? Let us know in the chat. Do you plan on eating more antioxidant rich foods? Are you planning on improving your sleep quality, maybe getting more sleep, going off social media, or trying to avoid going on your phone too much before bed? Do you have a goal for exercise? Maybe you plan on adding an extra day of exercise during the week. And I recommend being curious. So paying attention to your body, your mental health, your digestion, and seeing how it's affecting you. You can take notes on your worksheet, on your cell phone. And then again, follow up next month and let us know how your experiment went. Yeah, so I'll share, one thing I've been doing is I'm trying to limit my time of watching television, just not turning on the TV at the end of the night and instead listening to a podcast, reading a book. I think it's a really great way to unwind. And the last thing you see is, kind of what you think about at the end of the night before you go to bed. So you want to make sure that your mind is calm, it's focused on positive things, and it can really promote better quality of sleep. Kirtana said, I'm incorporating more protein in my diet since I started lifting more. Yeah, that's such a great point. And, you're kind of accommodating for the change in your exercise by adding in more protein into your diet. And I think that's so important because oftentimes we don't get enough protein. And if you do start weightlifting or doing types of exercise that are extracting more protein from your body, you definitely need to accommodate for that, especially as a vegetarian. Yeah. So plant-based sources of protein. There's actually so many great sources of plant-based protein, but how we get protein from plants is slightly different. And sometimes we have to eat a lot more protein to get enough protein from plant-based foods versus animal sources of food. So Kirtana, what are some of your favorite vegetarian sources of protein?
I figured I'd just jump on the call.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to incorporate more like pea-based protein in terms of the powder that I'm using. But apart from that, I try to incorporate like chickpeas, and pretty much like I started making salads with like avocados, and with that, I added more chickpeas and chia seeds in, and I'm very mindful about adding like flax as well. So trying to I think being aware that I need to incorporate protein has actually made the most difference, like that mindfulness behind consumption.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, just being aware of what you're eating and paying attention to whether or not it has protein, if it has more protein. And I'm sure you notice a difference when you're weightlifting too, and the results that you're getting. And I like that you're even combining things like avocados, which have healthy fats and they have a little bit of protein, and then adding in the legumes or the other plant-based sources of protein. One thing I've tried recently is actually tempeh with flax seeds. I don't know if you've had that before, but it's really interesting and really good. But I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's got the protein and it's got kind of some of the healthy fats.
Cool. I have never tried that, but I think I will try it now.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? So feel free to drop your experiments in the chat. I'm just going to move along for the sake of time. So here's a little bit of a recap of what we talked about today. So we talked about toxicity, how it can affect the body physically, mentally. We talked about nutrition and detoxification and how your diet can help support your body in detoxing from the holidays. We shared the recipe idea, which you should have for the smoothie on your worksheets. And then we talked about your monthly experiment. So something you can take away and try at home. All right, great. So if anyone has any last questions, please drop them in the chat. You're also welcome to email us. And if you are interested in working with myself or Dr. Nishi Bhopal, please visit our website. It's right here on this page, pacificintegrativepsych.com. And we hope to see you all at our next workshop. Oh, Dr. Marvin, endorsing all that you stated. I own 3 nursing homes. So all the information gathered here will go to our dietary team. We currently are cooking food 92% from scratch. Most foods are cooked with flax seeds. Wow, that's really interesting. And, congratulations for cooking so much of your food from scratch. That is a huge thing to be doing for, the people that live there. And they're very lucky to have you. All right, great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Nishi. Thank you, Kirtana. And we hope to see you all next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.